Yes, friends. Good morning. And it's indeed quite some time since we caught up on a conversation like this. So today's chat would be on a series of webinars on the African continent. I mean, we've had plenty of requests from both clients and professionals in terms of what's happening in that region, and many of them will help them expand in those jurisdictions. So we thought it would make sense for the larger interest of the fraternity and the entrepreneur community to uh, look at certain important destinations and also understand certain destinations which are new in the bargain. So to begin with, today's conversation would be about Nigeria, and one of the most popular jurisdictions for business in Africa. Now, what we would end up doing here is we will spend the first few minutes on the history of Nigeria, just to give you a background of what you are looking at, and in terms of the jurisdiction, and then get into the commercial aspects of the jurisdiction. We would like to, because this would give you a flavor of the jurisdiction you're getting into. Yes. So Nigeria, as we understand, is one of the most popular African countries, and it's in the western part of Africa. So to look at the way the society has evolved in Nigeria, typically the most of the African continent is basically tribal population, and when we say tribal, it is not in a very condescending way. It's actually in a very they carry a very rich cultural lineage, and that's one thing which has helped them sustain and maintain the ecosystem the way it is for quite some time. So from 500 BC to AD 200, the Nok people, or the Neolithic types as they call them, they were the first inhabitants of Africa, and subsequently they were followed by multiple predominant groups which shaped the Nigerian culture. So on the south you had the Hausa tribe, on the north you had the Fulani, on the southwest you had Igba, and Yoruba was again in there in southwest. Then, of course, one thing what both Nigeria and India share in common is we both are colonies of the British Empire. So, just as how Britishers entered into India through the East India Company, they entered into Nigeria in order to trade with the rapidly growing civilization. And once they took over, they dictated affairs of the territory and enslaved the population. And the colonial rule ran for almost 50 years. And one thing what is really starking is if you see the British Memorial in World War II in London, there is no specific mention about Nigeria, but they say Africa in toto. But you had countries like India, Sri Lanka being mentioned there. But when it comes to Nigeria, it was just the entire African continent. So that's something which the Nigerians still have a grudge, because their contribution has been significantly undermined by this gesture. And of course, there is always a claim that the Britishers modernized the society. To what extent that's true? I mean, we all, as inhabitants of a colony, know we were plundered more than we were modernized. So, Frederick Lugard was an ex British soldier who had the reins of Nigeria in 1912, and he ran the country mostly from England, and he promoted slavery and military control. Because at one point, the slave trade was so ruthless that people would just be kidnapped from shores of river and taken as slave traders. I mean, slaves to be sold. And the British companies, some of them which had the blessing of the royal uh, empire, had literally complete monopoly on slave trade. And so this gentleman was reputed to be one of the most ruthless officers. And thanks to his oppression, it united the Nigerians to struggle to fight for their independence. And I think one of the most interesting attributes of Nigerian independence is a lot of women-led actions have happened. So women in Nigeria are extremely strong and very, very enterprising and dynamic as a society. Yes. So, 1960, shortly after World War II, the African continent intended to have independence, and they anonymously received tanks disguised as tractors and prepared for the war. But effectively, unlike the Indian independence, I mean, there was not as much a bloodshed as uh, we had to shed for our independence as compared to what Nigerians. I mean, our bloodshed was far more profuse. So the Nigerian independence was a lot more peaceful in terms of transition of power. And British by that time was also weakened by World War II, and they had to literally focus on what their affairs were, and that's how it made it convenient for Nigerians to get their independence. And finally, having earned their independence, they got their own republic and dealt with the territory matters themselves. However, the British rule continues through trade. So that's where I think that's something which they have tried to. Most of these European powers still continue to maintain, thanks to their influence, whatever they've had on their colonies. So now this is the background, friends, and see, at one point. There's this very popular conference. If you have time, you can read that. It's called the Berlin Conference, where effectively the entire Africa was split between the Allied forces. Um, and literally, this is without the African countries being present there. And it was like saying, okay, they took the map of Africa and then they said, okay, you take the west, I'll take the east, you take the south, I'll take the north, and stuff like that between three powers. And that's how ruthless the colonization and the impact of European imperialism was there on the African civilization. So now, getting back, friends, to quickly trying to understand the doing what it takes to do business in India, and just to give you a high level understanding of what Nigeria is. We've done this, and I would thank my research team, Gracelyn, Subhash, Sundar, and Jugal for their efforts in getting this presentation for us today. It is a bit okay. So these are some of the terms we've used. I think let's look at it as we move on into the presentation, friends. This is the agenda what we have in terms of the areas we would cover. First, we'll do an overview of the country. What we've seen now is the historical overview. Then we shall look at setting up the business, uh, what it takes, registration, and what are the permits to be obtained, and from a tax perspective, what are the registrations required, what are the tax profile of the jurisdiction. Some key interesting statistics for us to understand, and wherever required, I'll try and compare that with India. What are the COVID impact reforms which the Nigerian government has done, and where what's the way forward if you intend to do business in that jurisdiction? So let's look at it. The real GDP in 2019 was about $480 billion. To put it into perspective, India is about 2.6, $2.7 billion. So they're about one fifth the size of India. So and this is the largest in Africa in terms of size, 27th in the world. And per capita GDP is about $2,386, which is still $500 more than what Indian per capita GDP is. So we are about 1,800 odd. And there is a recent clamor that we are lower than Bangladesh. I don't know to what extent that is true, but yes, that's where India is. And from a just give me a sec. Just getting some questions. Yes, I'll answer questions at the end of the conversation. Yes, population perspective, it's about 20 crores, and again, India is about 135 crores. It's the largest in Africa and sixth in the world. In terms of urbanization, more than half the population is urbanized, and the major cities are Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, and FC. In terms of wealth, they are fifth in uranium reserves, very important for nuclear power, seventh in natural gas, 11th in oil reserves, and the other natural resources which are there are tin, iron ore, and coal. From a business climate perspective, the top five sectors by GDP contribution, agriculture is close to a quarter, 22%. IT is about 10%. Oil and manufacturing is about 9% and 8.5% respectively. Mining is about 8.5%. Real estate is 7.5%, thereabouts. Governance score, they're at 47, 48 in terms of governance score, ranked on the latter half of the African countries. So there is some distance to be covered in terms of governance. Employment distribution, it's interesting that nearly half the population is dependent on services. That's very encouraging. So agricultural dependence is commensurate with their contribution to GDP, which is not the case with India. Industry is about one fourth, and yes, ease of doing business, they're about 131 in terms of ranking. So India has broken 100 in that space. And as far as exports are concerned, nearly 90% of their exports are ruled by and mineral fuel. So that's where you would see where the larger chunk of foreign exchange comes into this country. Moving on. Poverty is about 40%. We are at one third of our population at poverty. Unemployment rate amongst total workforce, 27% is unemployed. That's a staggering number. And between the youth, it's about 35%. So, which is why if you hear some stories about crimes and other things, it's primarily because of the increase in unemployment or the staggering unemployment rate. Inflation of 13.5%. So that's a massive number. So that's something which we all need to be concerned. So which effectively pushes up the interest cost, right? So effectively the interest rates in those jurisdictions would be upwards of 15-17% minimum, and it goes much more than that. So in terms of borrowing, so if we have access to capital at a much lower price, putting it in Nigeria makes it very interesting from a return on investment perspective. So in terms of if you are to set up a business there, who are the regulators we need to understand? One is Corporate Affairs Commission, the CAC as they call it. It typically handles all the corporate related transactions, typically a Ministry of Corporate Affairs here. Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission, similar to your Foreign Investment Promotion Board, which focuses on encouraging investments in Nigeria. And the Federal Inland Revenue Service, similar to your CBDT in India, which focuses on collecting CBDT and CBIC together, focus on collecting and accounting value-added tax and corporate income tax. So it's a mix of both direct and indirect taxes under one regulator. So these are the primary regulators you need to be concerned about. So the stages to get into Nigeria. First, we need to register with CAC, then with the NIPC, Investment Promotion Board, then obtain a business permit and expat quota, and then you register with the tax authorities to move on. So what does it take to register with a CAC to start your business? I wouldn't be getting too much into the technical specifics, but just to give you a high level perspective in terms of what are the minimum directors and minimum capital required, and in terms of types of companies, it's about you have similar company limited by shares, guarantee, and dollars. Of course, I mean, even in India, if you see the cost of incorporating a company, technically the fee you pay to a regulator is less than $100, but effectively the overall cost is a function of the constitution and the business and other things which are involved. And yes, most of it is online at this point in time. So they've got their own portals from where these things can be done. Of course, manual intervention is required in exceptional cases. The highest level you would require two directors, and there's no need for a local director as well. So that makes it very interesting. And for number of shareholders for a private limited company, you can have up to 50 non-employee shareholders, and of course for a public limited company it's unlimited. Minimum capital is very very meager. In terms of private limited companies, it's about $26, and for a foreign company with a foreign participation, they're talking about a minimum of $26,000 of minimum capital. But technically, investments, what our experience is, at least $1 million and plus gets a gets a fairly good favorable consideration. And partnership and sole proprietorship, this is something which we would ideally not recommend for foreigners. And what's very interesting is foreigners can invest in existing business, and there is no restriction in terms of sector, like what we have in our FDI. And dividends and profits can be repatriated tax free for the first 3 years. India also has a DTA with Nigeria. The larger market players in terms of oil, you have Shell, Chevron, and Total Nigeria. And mining, you have Agropet Nigeria, ETA, Zuma Group, and Greenfield Metals. IT and communication, you have MTN, Globacom, Airtel, and Nine Mobile. Construction, you have Julius Berger, Reynolds Construction, Cetraco, Nigeria, Brunelli. And real estate, you have Jai Taiwo, Cadwell, and Primrose Developments. These are the major names in this space. And if you see the businesses registered for foreign companies, totally last year there were about 465 businesses which have got registered. Primarily, nearly 25% was in wholesale and retail. So that gives you an idea. Manufacturing was the second with 84 companies. Mining and quarry was 28. But again, the scale of investment in that sector is pretty high. IT was about 24, construction 22. And you would see that by and large, Lagos was preferred. Out of the 464, 295 came from Lagos, and FCT was 55, and Abuja was 28. So that's a picture on what are the primary areas. So Lagos is by far the most popular place for setting up. And what does it take to get a business permission, business commencement approval for a foreigner? I think that's important for all of us who intend to get into Nigeria. Just a second. Yes, there is some lag, friends, on the internet. So we need to register with the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. So that's primary, and you have to follow. They do have criterion, because the focus is more about getting value-added businesses which can generate employment in Nigeria. They are the ones who have a far higher possibility of getting the approval. And in terms of expat quota, it is the authorization to a company to employ individual expats to specifically approved job designations. And the quotas form the basis of work permit and is generally processed along with business permits. So you've got a permanent until reviewed quota, which is for the top management, reserved for chairman or the managing director. So he can stay in that jurisdiction as long as he wants. And temporary, which is reserved for director and other employees of the company. And this residential permit would be for a short duration as long as their position in the company continues. And the tax registration. So you need to apply and then online and obtain a VAT, and then also get the e-tax clearance. And as tax residency is something which is required for you to get tax DTA benefits. If you look at the tax rates, 30% is a corporate tax rate, and 20% of the turnover is less than 100 million Nigerian currency. Capital gains is about 10%, and they have about 13 DTAs, not yet with India at this point in time. The rate of tax ranges from, I'm sorry, I did say that they have a DTA with India. They don't have a DTA with India. For personal tax, it's between 7 to 24%. With, of course, exemption slabs. VAT is a 5% VAT, and non-oil exports are zero rated. Withholding tax 10% on passive income, and 7.5% without, where there is a DTA. So for those 13 countries, and in any case, the outer limit for withholding is just 10%. So interest is an interesting way. They don't have, to my knowledge, thin capitalization rules at this point. So that makes it, you can do a debt to equity mix in favorable manner. Due date with 6 months from the end of the accounting year for the companies, and 31st of March of every year as far as personal income tax. And VAT is supposed to be done on a monthly basis, similar to India. I mean, VAT is our GST equivalent. So this is very interesting, friends, for those of us who intend to get into Nigeria. Tax holidays and concessions. Before I get there, I'd like to answer a question just come in terms of, is there a possibility for specific tax exemptions? Yes, very much, and that's where we are coming through. So companies investing in specified industrial activities like glass and glassware manufacturing or fertilizers and steel manufacturing may be granted a tax holiday for 3 plus 2 years subject to conditions. And a new company which engages in mining of solid minerals is exempt from tax for the first 3 years of operation. And companies carrying out agricultural production are exempt from income tax for a period of 5 years, and which can be extended for an additional 3 years. And those engaged in manufacturing activity in an export processing zone and incurs expenditure in qualifying building and plant and machinery, again, are entitled for 100% capital allowance. So that's the perspective on the sectors where the government wants you to invest. So, and 25% of income from tourism and hotels is convertible in convertible currency is exempt from tax if the income is put in a reserve fund, which is to be used for expansion. And the interest on deposit accounts of a non-resident company is tax exempt, provided the depositor does not become a non-resident after making the deposit while in Nigeria. Again, an investment allowance of 10% on the cost of qualifying expenses for a plant and machinery, so it's accelerated depreciation is available. Companies engaged in gas utilization are entitled to tax-free the period of up to 5 years and tax-free dividends during this period. So there is a good basket of sectors which they're interested in attracting foreign investments. And if you have to look at the key interesting statistics as far as Nigeria is concerned, just a sec, friends. Has a plummet and is now the recovery path. So you would see it was about 6%, 6.3 in 2014, came down all the way to 2016 to minus 1.6. Now it's on a positive trajectory to 2.2. Of course, thanks to COVID, there is a good levels of contraction expected. Tax revenues have been growing at anywhere between in double digits. And here you would see the petroleum profit tax and the non-oil taxes. But unfortunately, in 2020 so far has not been a great year. Obviously, anywhere in the world, they're having this problem. Till then, they were growing at a healthy a single digit, but yes, 2018 to 19, there was a dip. Till 18, there was a good growth in tax collections. The tax to GDP ratio is something which this jurisdiction needs to worry about, and that clearly speaks volumes about their enforcement. It's plummeted from 7.6 to 5.7. That's a serious case for concern. India, to give you a perspective, the tax to GDP for India is about 10.5%. US is about 20-25%. Most of the developed world is between 25 to 30%. So for a country to be at 5%, 6% with a per capita income which is 20% more than India's per capita income, speaks about the existing enforcement scenario in that jurisdiction. So the net trade in goods and services, there have been a trade deficit all through, and this is in billions. So they've had about a $31 billion trade deficit as far as 2019 is concerned. So they've consistently been in trade deficits all along. So foreign exchange is a cause for concern. Capital import. So this is very interesting to look at. So they've had somewhere about $16 billion of funds getting into Nigeria as a foreign portfolio investment. So which is money getting into the listed securities. So, and FDI investments it was close to $1 billion in 2019. To give you a landscape, India's FDI investment is between 45 to $50 billion, and our FPI inflows are about 6 to 7 times that number. But it's interesting that Nigeria has consistently attracted more than 10, on an average, about $6 to $10 billion throughout, which shows the vibrancy of their stock markets. That's something to look at from that perspective. And you would see the sectors in which the monies have gone. And right from the blue line represents the investments in the stock market. And right from 2018, from 15 to 18, the amount of money in the stock markets has been significant. But banking and financial services has overtaken the last 2 years. That's really interesting to understand. Agricultural has obtained marginal. Services have been obtaining reasonable amounts of foreign capital inflow. Telecom, yes, but that's again, you have very few and large players operating in that space. So, for people who are looking at this as a jurisdiction, manufacturing is a space, financing is an interesting space to be in. Banking looks very interesting, but financing, we still do not know in terms of their contract enforceability. That's a cause for concern as far as Nigeria is concerned. Problem with India as well. This is something very interesting. The time taken to register a property is 92 days. So that gives you a feel on the bureaucratic space, the overhang. Time to export is 74 to 128 hours. Documentary compliance is 74 hours, and border compliance is 128. So roughly about 200 hours. So we're talking about 8 to 9 days. And time to import again is 360 hours, so roughly about 15 days. So these are the real bottlenecks which needs to be overcome if someone needs to look at that jurisdiction for operating. And when it comes to COVID-19 impact and its what they have done, what the government has done so far, honestly, we need to give it to them because they are a country which is struggling. The economy so far has contracted by 6%, the Q2, but that's significantly lower than what happened to India. The average oil production has come down by 10%. The growth rate of oil sector declined by 11%. They've had about 60,000 cases with a recovery rate of fantastic 99%. And the post-COVID recovery, the World Bank expects the recovery to be steep, and the overall dip is only contraction is only about 3.3%. To give you a perspective, again, India is likely to contract by about 9.5 to 10% for this year. So, COVID has not had that bad an impact on Nigeria at this point. The reforms, 1 year extension of moratorium on principles, was something which we have also done. There's a reduction in interest rate on intervention loans from 9 to 5%, strengthening of the loan to deposit ratio policy, and close to $1 trillion in loans to boost local manufacturing and production. Fiscal policy, the crude oil benchmark price was reduced from 57 to $30, and it pledged to pump in about $3 billion in critical sectors of the economy. And so similarly, moratorium was given to all federal government funded loans issued by banks of industry, banks of agricultural, and Exim Bank. Tax measures, due dates have been extended, waiver of late return penalty for taxpayers, and all those goodwill gestures have happened. And the government seeks to cut planned spending. So almost $4 billion of expenditure cut. That's going to have an impact on the multiplier effect in the economy. Suspension of payment of the new electricity tariffs, and federal government further slashed the price of premium motor spirit from by about a percentage to a liter. So these were the measures the government has taken to move on. So at this point in time, from what we understand, there is a good thrust on the ease of doing business. Low tax rates are moderate, and they're also giving good number of incentives for people to come and set up business. One attraction is there's no restriction in terms of sectors. There's a good amount of workforce with the age of 15 to 35, and as we saw, 35% of the population is at this point unemployed. So access to cheap labor is very much available. At present, oil, mining, quarrying, manufacturing, and IT are sectors where overseas investors basically are interested in. And what also is interesting is uh, the depth of the stock market. So we've seen some $8 to $10 billion of foreign portfolio investments entering the country. So that shows the market is in an interesting zone. So these were some of our thoughts, friends, on this. And Yes, any specific questions, please do write because I'm just leaving now. And it was indeed nice. Thanks for these chats and comments. And let's catch up soon. Please do stay in touch. Thank you.